Bittensor TAO. I'm going to open your eyes, if you are investing in this, to understand what you are actually investing in and what this architecture of TAO looks like, because this is going to actually surprise you and this is going to literally burst some bubbles. I'm going to put TAO under the limelight because there's a lot to this that is very easy to misunderstand. For example, they have staking, all right? Is it proof of stake? No. Like for example, they have mining, they have validators. Does it work like proof of work? How are these validators actually working? Who are these validators? There are multiple layers to how this works. And if you don't understand the underlying architecture, well, then this is going to be quite a video for you. As well, I'm going to be comparing Bittensor TAO to an optimized architecture model that is not yet implemented, but it very well could be. This is proof of useful work. And there's a lot of things out there. For example, a lot of these concepts may sound good as a headline, but it's not applicable whatsoever to global adoption in any way for AI. And even Jonathan Sampolinski's own thoughts on this development, and of course, going forward, what that means for an ideal optimized architecture on the layer one. What does that mean for Bittensor TAO? What does that mean for other possible cryptos out there? What it means to actually be useful, what it means to be able to scale, not just within like a crypto environment, but to be able to scale with this massively growing industry of AI, for them to come on board it to this crypto architecture and how that can be done going long term. I'll be explaining in depth at the end of the video. TAO. It's one of the most centralized cryptos that exist, and I'm going to be explaining and sharing exactly why and how. And with that comes some drastic security concerns as well. And then the cherry on top is the inefficiencies of its scalability. They have a great idea, they have a great concept that they're trying to make work, and that's been their goal from the start, to get working on integrating AI with crypto. But it is extremely far from being optimized. First and foremost, we got to clear any sort of misconception. All right, the underlying subtensor blockchain, Bittensor's chain, is a proof of authority, POA. All right, it's not proof of stake, it's not proof of work, it's POA. And unfortunately, this has a lot of drawbacks in terms of decentralization. So going into proof of authority, prioritizes reputation and identity over computational power or wealth. You're comparing even to proof of work and proof of stake. Relying on fixed number of trusted validators. These validators are selected based on identity, reputation, or trustworthiness. Okay, there's a lot of trust here. That's something that you're going to have to really live with TAO. POA, a limited approved set of nodes, historically controlled and gated by Open Tensor Foundation. Well, actually, it's a lot worse than that. Open Tensor Foundation, otherwise known as OTF, are the ones that handle a few nodes. This is the foundation that handles everything for consensus, for confirming transactions, and maintaining the chain's history. The centralization concern spreads directly to security. It introduces some centralization in node governance. Now, I'm going to deep dive into this, okay, because this is really surface level material. Layer one, this is the security, okay? The layer one is literally just proof of authority. The subtensor is where the transaction validation is performed only by trusted nodes controlled by the Open Tensor Foundation. This raises decentralization concerns as the Open Tensor Foundation has full control over the network, including the ability to censor transactions. And it doesn't just stop at censoring transactions, unfortunately. I'll be going into depth about that. They say a transition to proof of stake is planned. The timeline is still unknown. So right now we're talking about proof of authority. And even if they go to proof of stake already has some pretty hard limitations compared to proof of work, of which I don't know if I need to explain it to you, but the proof of stake model, the security is not nearly as good as proof of work. Proof of work, with Bitcoin, Kaspa, for example. Proof of stake, it's first off, it's a lot more centralization of wealth. Security model is not as good. A 33% Byzantine fault tolerance versus 50% Byzantine fault tolerance on proof of work. The proof of work takes the crown in terms of security. So ideally, they look for a proof of work solution, and that's what I'm going to be giving at the end of the video. So stay tuned. But for now, we're going to be going into the depths of this architecture. There is no crypto economic security budget here at all. It's proof of authority. So no attacker needs to acquire hash power or stake to compromise the chain. They just need to compromise the Open Tensor Foundation, which is a single legal entity. This is strictly worse than proof of stake, let alone proof of work. So the fact of being even worse than proof of stake, it's a pretty low blow. And it's running very similar to a startup company in a very centralized way. The management, the oversight, it's coming from this single foundation. All right, let's explain the subtensor chain validators. All right, this is on the L1. This on the L1 is the most extreme centralized part of the entire architecture. All right, this is the blockchain itself. The work of validating the blockchain itself is performed by the Open Tensor Foundation on proof of authority model. That means there is no public validator set. OTF, the Open Tensor Foundation, runs the nodes that actually author and finalize blocks. All right, so how are validators chosen? They're not chosen through any open mechanism. It's the Open Tensor Foundation. They simply run trusted, whitelisted nodes. It's like basically insiders, a few of them. There's no staking, there's no election, there's no competition. So that raises significant decentralization concerns. They have full control over the network, including the ability to censor transactions. And as I'm going to explain, it doesn't just stop at censoring transactions. That's why I'm so surprised that Bittensor TAO has such a high valuation, because there's some real security concerns here. And there's been multiple successful attack vectors already done on Bittensor TAO. And I'll be explaining that later in the video. Attacks that have been successful for tens of millions of dollars. So the Open Tensor Foundation has ability to pause the blockchain entirely when necessary. And again, as I mentioned, that the transition to proof of stake is planned. The timeline is unknown. And even transitioning to proof of stake would be not just any normal transition, but it's going to be having to change the entirety of its architecture. And that's no easy task, especially for this foundation that has really taken a quick lane, the quick route to releasing by releasing as proof of authority and releasing the way that they have via Substrate model. And I'm going to be explaining that as well. So the layer 1 blockchain validators, the exact number of nodes is not publicly disclosed. This is a major red flag. Going to be honest, the Open Tensor Foundation doesn't publish a list of its block anchoring nodes. The work of validating the blockchain is performed by their foundation, meaning it's a private, trusted set of nodes. There's no public registry, no election, no way of independently verifying the count, let alone cryptographically verifying. The best estimates from the community are somewhere in the single digits to low tens of nodes, all controlled by the Open Tensor Foundation. I mean, this is just crazy, man. Honestly, this is pretty crazy. And I'm going to just be going into these depths of like what this actually means. It's not just about censoring transactions, but it's double spend, reorgs, MEV front running, emission manipulation, network halts, runtime upgrade to change balances, insider theft. In these cases, some of which have even happened. So this is pretty, honestly, pretty wild that here we are talking about AI, and AI has so much hype around it that unfortunately I see this largely as this whole concept, this whole idea, trying to make it work, but the underlying architecture just is not there. It's not there whatsoever, and to call this a crypto is very far from the cypherpunk values of decentralization, because with decentralization, it's hand in hand with security. Once you have a single point of failure and someone that has complete control over the entire blockchain, with their nodes, they can literally do anything. They could perform any sort of attack and multiple sorts of attacks. And it's just a whole trust me bro coin. And that doesn't sit well with me. Sure, it's going to have a lot of speculative investors, but to be worth already billions, I mean, gosh, even a fully diluted market cap of, I think, $5 billion, that's putting a lot of money in a place that may not have the best interests of the actual people. And it's crazy too, looking at the fully diluted values, 5.5 billion, and looking at the total supply, about half of it is circulating. The other half is still to be rewarded to people, to validators, into miners, people working the AI, people that are overlooking the AI work, people that are staking and just randomly just deciding to stake that staked money, just gaining a lot more money. It's just like so much money. I mean, look at that. That's literally around $2.8 billion. It's about half the entire current valuation is still to be entered into the market. in the next 15 years, something like that. But that's a lot of money still to be entered in the market. So if this whole system doesn't upgrade fast, then it's going to have a lot of sell pressure from this emission schedule. And it's going to look, it's not going to be pretty for investors that are here investing without understanding the deep architecture of it and the issues that come from this architecture. And it's not just about the layer 1 not being optimized, but it's also about the layer 2 not being optimized. The way the work is being measured of the AI, the miners, the validators are looking at that work in a very subjective way. Even if you want to look at it, some of the miners, or I want to say even most of them, looking at it in an objective way. They use math to be able to see if the work being done is providing actual real benefits to the output of an AI model. It can be even looking at it in a lens of, okay, even if it were objective, there's no way to cryptographically prove that these validators are taking it objectively, that they are actually using the rubric. There's nothing to prove it. All they do is they can submit some random numbers that they want, and say, yeah, I used the rubric, or yeah, I ran the model. But there's no cryptographic proof. Again, it's a trust me, bro. It doesn't stop at the L1, but it goes to the L2. And this is something I'm going to be explaining in depth in the video as well. When you have so much control at the top, all it takes is one bad actor, one bad egg, and it can ruin the whole entire organization. So the core innovation, now this is looking at the layer 2. The layer 1 itself focuses on the blockchain itself. The layer 2 focuses on the AI, okay? So the core innovation is the Yuma consensus, okay? This is described as a form of proof of intelligence, or a subjective, not even objective, but a subjective utility consensus. This is on-chain mechanism, aggregates weights that validators assign to miners based on the quality of their AI output. Okay, so basically you have these validators. One set of validators is here, the Open Tensor Foundation, okay, running the blockchain validators. This is for everything to do with the blockchain, transactions, balances, everything to do with the blockchain, okay? And then you have the AI model. Basically, the validators here are different validators, and their job is to evaluate the work of the AI miners. And the miners here who are providing computational work for specific AI outputs. So there's basically a rubric that these validators work with, and it uses stake-weighted medians, outlier clipping, and other techniques to determine reward emissions for miners and validators. This is where the AI staking miners all come into play. Now we're looking at a system that is at least a lot more decentralized than the layer 1s, which is ironic because you would think the foundation of the whole architecture of the crypto should be the most decentralized part. But here we are, the layer 2 is on a very unstable foundation. Okay, so this here at least has a fixed number of validators, 64 validators for the root subnet. Okay, then for every other regular subnet, again, it uses the top 64 nodes by a stake-weighted model. The ones that stake the most TAO are going to be able to serve as a validator, basically, what this means. Now, however, even the layer 2 subnet security is also not great because it's concentrated, okay? It has a considerable concentration in both stake, meaning the TAO, like the money, and the rewards, okay? So these rewards are largely tailored to these validators that are basically trying to measure, is this work actually good? Is this providing an output that's useful for AI? So the overwhelming amount of money is not paid for doing good AI work. You get paid for having a lot of TAO staked. So the incentive mechanism is just, it's not aligned completely. It's about half and half. So you have these multiple layers that are very suboptimal. And even within these layers, it's once again a system that is not completely optimized. This staking here, unlike proof of stake, for example, that serves a security purpose, this staking doesn't serve security at all. The security is all based on the blockchain, proof of authority. Okay, the validators, the number of them, completely unknown. That's the largest red flag, about this. They're not even publicizing it. The community estimate is a few nodes. You count them on the single hand. That's an estimate. Okay, so appointed by and controlled by the Open Tensor Foundation. It's not open. Okay, then the validators for the layer 2, it's a fixed 64. There's not even a replacement mechanism that's currently active. This replacement mechanism is frozen, and who knows when it's going to be back online. So you have these validators that, whether they're doing a good job, whether they have a lot of staked amount, they're stuck at 64, same 64 validators in the root subnet. Okay, again, that's a bit of a red flag. And then each regular subnet up to 64 validators total, top 64 by staked weight. Okay, so this is just a little summary. Network-wide, all subnets includes about 37,000 validators. So that's like all the different subnets. Every single subnet has 64, and those 64 just work for that single subnet. So this total amount at least can help distribute some of the staked TAO, but that's basically what that represents. Okay, now again, looking at governance, security, here we go. It is also centralized. Okay, so there's a governance model. And they tried to at least make something a little bit more decentralized. But in doing so, you could see the point of this is not to actually decentralize the crypto, decentralize Bittensor. No, it's actually just to look like it's decentralized. But in the end of the day, it is extremely centralized because at the very end, they have a unilateral kill switch. Open Tensor Foundation has a kill switch. They have a pseudo command, bypassing governance entirely. They could push the code that they want in an emergency, perhaps. You know, call it what you want. In a hack, an emergency, it is what it is during different circumstances. But at the end of the day, this is the centralization that scares me to death. So first, let's look at what the model, what this DAO, this governance represents. Okay, there's a triumvirate composed of Open Tensor Foundation employees, creates all the proposals. Okay, so that's again just, I mean, that's not ideal, the fact that they could only create proposals. So hey, the Senate then is formed from the top delegates by stake, and then they vote on the proposal, and then the proposal only executes after reaching 50 plus 1% of the Senate approval, and it requires a triumvirate member to close it. But the OTF, Open Tensor Foundation, needs to close it. Basically, they have the final vetoing power. If they don't agree with the Senate, they can just be like, they could just scrap it. And then the proposal just vanishes and nothing happens from it. So the Open Tensor Foundation has veto power over all governance. You realize how centralized this whole architecture is. And it's not just from one angle. It's not just in one certain aspect. It's every single aspect of Bittensor TAO. It is extremely oriented in a centralized manner. And they have their little back doors, this kill switch. Even if the Senate unanimously votes for something, a triumvirate member must close it and they can kill it if they want to. Okay, so what does this do? We're looking at the power of the Open Tensor Foundation. This is looking at the blockchain power. Okay, if you have a lot of money, you're moving on Bittensor TAO. If you're even holding a lot of money on Bittensor TAO, this is a problem because there's transaction censorship. Meaning if you send a transaction, they can choose, because they have the power of the nodes. They could, the Open Tensor Foundation, with the few little nodes they have, the unknown private ones that we have no idea about, proof of authority, there you go. They can be, you send a transaction, they could be like, not interested in that transaction. So they could censor it. And that doesn't get on the blockchain. Precedent, likely this has happened. Double spend, reorgs. All right, is this possible? Yes, absolutely possible. Once you have full control of a node, the nodes that control the blockchain, what transactions get on the blockchain. The Open Tensor Foundation could absolutely create a double spend attack. So the double spend happens when a crypto is spent more than once. This is a ridiculous problem that is even possible. The fact that it's even possible is just wild. So fortunately, there's nothing publicly known about such an attack happening. But the fact that it's possible shows how much trust is required in the Open Tensor Foundation. MEV front running. Yes, it's possible and it's actively occurring. This is something I'm going to go into depth as well later in the video, but this is a major problem. And the solution they put is just a little band-aid. Emission manipulation. This is absolutely possible, and it has even happened with an SN28 intervention. The Open Tensor Foundation, they came in, and the fact that they changed things, they could change it without even a Senate approval with a certain pseudo command that that is inherent. It's basically admin powers. It's like, oh, this whole Senate exists, but guess what? We have the master key, and if we want to do something emergency, hey, we can just do it. That is the power of centralization, and that is exactly what crypto was made to overcome. A network halt, this has even happened. Again, Open Tensor Foundation can halt the entire network. I mean, when you see any network that just has a foundation that's able to halt it, a few people able to halt the whole network, you know there's a problem. So they halt a network, and they've done this in July 2024, and I'm pretty sure this has happened numerous times, not just July 2024. The fact that they have the power to continue to do this so is also another major red flag. Runtime upgrade change balances is just wild. The fact that they could just on the fly introduce an upgrade to the network, the entire blockchain, and to change and update balances. They can manipulate the supply and do as they wish. They could change certain balances. Oh, you own this amount? Okay, you're going to own less, and I'm going to own more. And it's going to still have them maintain the same supply, but you're never going to know because, hey, maybe that wallet is dead and gone. Maybe the wallet has been inactive, and that's the power that these people have if they want to. It's all about ethics, right? It's all about trust, right? No, that's not what crypto is about. Okay, so there's even insider theft, man. Insider theft. This has happened, and it's happened at $28 to $30 million hack. That was only possible via an insider in the Open Tensor Foundation. Only possible. Again, this is talking about the centralization, the single point of failure. All you need is one single rogue person in this whole foundation to cause such a crazy hack worth $30 million. It's happened before, and guess what? It's very much possible to happen again because the underlying infrastructure has not changed. It's continuing to be this very poor architecture on the layer one. So now explaining the runtime upgrades possible on the substrate. The substrate represents the chain that essentially the blockchain of Bittensor TAO. Okay, this is the model that they run on, Substrate. Okay, there's two ways to upgrade. The one is the decentralized version, or so it seems, the governance path. This is documented process. Open Tensor Foundation proposes, the Senate votes, triumvirate member closes it. This is what the docs describe as a decentralized path. But then guess what? Surprise, it doesn't just end there. It doesn't just end with the triumvirate member having to have the power to decide whether they actually want this proposal to the Senate vote on. Do they want it to do they want it to go through? It's up to them. It's up to the Open Tensor Foundation in the end. The pseudo key path. Now this is the master key. Every substrate chain ships with a pseudo pallet, a master key that can execute any extrinsic directly, bypassing governance entirely. They could push the code that they want. Now the critical question is whether it's still being used or whether it has been fully revoked. Now that's the bad news, because looking at live GitHub commits, recent subtensor releases include functions like the pseudo set bounds, add pseudo set bonds, recently as 2025. And not just 2025, but I checked myself and it was just 3 months ago that I go here, the blockchain, and I sort it by a pseudo command. And here we go from just 3 months ago. Here they go, toggling the weights, toggling user liquidity, the tempo. They're doing all sorts of things. From 3 months ago, the pseudo command is being used. So that's just, it's wild, man. It's honestly wild. So the fact that they have the power, the fact that they're not fully revoking this power, and the fact that they're constantly using this master key as they wish, pretty recently too. And this is the stuff that you don't see. This is the stuff that's not advertised. This is the stuff that will not be advertised. Gosh, even on the TAO, their docs explaining mining and validation, like something that's very easily misunderstood. And here they say, is it the same as Bitcoin? No, there's some key differences. The Bitcoin miners, they validate blocks according to proof of work, so they can be added to the blockchain. Bittensor mining has nothing to do with blocks on the chain. Instead, it has to do with production of digital commodities. That's referring to the computational power for working an AI model. Similarly, validation within subnets has nothing to do with validating blocks. It concerns validating the work performed by miners. So they're using these same words, mining and validation, when it has nothing to do with the actual meaning of those words in traditional blockchains. So is that done on purpose in a way that can easily lead to misinterpretation and misunderstanding of what TAO represents or what TAO, how it actually works? So is there a separate blockchain validation on Bittensor? Yes, indeed. In Bittensor, the work of validating the blockchain is performed by Open Tensor Foundation on a proof of authority model. And notice it just stops there. The information stops there. They don't want to go in depth about it, because if they go in depth about it, that's going to raise all the red flags. And it's funny too. You go in the summary on CoinMarketCap, and then the same type of deal. They talk about, oh, how's it secured? Oh, it's so secure. It's all of this, all of that. And at the end of the day, they don't mention anything about the power and the centralization and the lack thereof security. They don't talk about that because at the end of the day, they want to focus on AI and that whole narrative that's easily hyped. It's very easy to market, oh, TAO, they're all about AI on blockchain, AI on crypto. But hey, don't talk about our centralization and lack of security, because, hey, we just don't have that. We don't have the decentralization. We don't have that security that you are accustomed to in cryptos. We don't want to talk about that. Here I am. This is one of the most important things about a crypto. And that's why I mentioned in previous videos, it's all about optimization. If you're going to have Bittensor TAO, it needs to be run on the most optimized layer 1. What's the most optimized layer 1? Well, I've done my research and I found out it's Kaspa. Okay, I've explained Kaspa. I have my whole channel focusing on Kaspa. So if you want to understand what makes that the most optimized crypto layer 1, well, there's a lot of resources there for you. For example, one path that Bittensor has going to the future. I'll be explaining in depth about another path that could still stay with Kaspa, referring to useful proof of work. Now, this is a model that can absolutely save Bittensor TAO, or a different crypto. For example, even Kaspa could integrate that technology to make Bittensor look like a play toy. So it depends who wants to integrate it first and who wants to integrate it on the most optimized layer 1, because that's going to be able to power it long-term to global adoption, not just some sort of playground. All right, looking back at the power stack of the Open Tensor Foundation, what can the Open Tensor Foundation do? They have the pseudo key. That's the mechanism. They could do anything. They could mint. They could mint tokens. They could freeze. They could upgrade runtime. They could change balances. It's just ridiculous, the power that this admin key, this master key, gives them. Required governance? None. So centralization and a major security problem with the whole blockchain of Bittensor, okay? And this stuff needs to come to light. I'm happy to share this stuff. And I'm honestly sad, because there seemed like there's a lot of people from Kaspa just jumping on board this ship without understanding what the heck they're actually investing in. They're investing in AI. They have this whole grand model, the whole grand idea of what Bittensor is. But in reality, they're not putting their feet on the ground and seeing how this actually works. So proof of authority block production, there's censorship, there's reordering, front running, double spending. All these different attacks are all absolutely possible by not just any random third-party entity, but it's all possible by a single centralized entity, the one that controls the whole operation, Open Tensor Foundation. And that's something that we have already seen an insider from the Open Tensor Foundation to do such an attack and to get away with a hack worth $30 million. That has already been done. And it's certainly a precedent that can happen again. It requires governance? No. Centralization leads to security problems. Triumvirate veto. Okay, they could block any Senate proposal. So any proposal that goes to the Senate then has to, whether they agree, disagree, at the end, it's just the Open Tensor Foundation has the final veto on whatever heck the Senate agrees on. So requires governance? No. Safe mode. There's a safe mode mechanism that can freeze the entire chain. What that includes is also every single transaction frozen. Okay, this has already been done twice. Like I've mentioned, it wasn't just done in 2024, it's done twice. So does it require governance? No. The OTF, Open Tensor Foundation, They can just put that into safe mode. That master key can unlock the entire chain any way that they want. Anything they can do anything. Runtime upgrade via sudo. Change all chain logic in one block. Bruh. It requires governance to vote? No. Okay, this is something that centralization of crypto, it's not taken seriously. It's really not. This centralization, I also mentioned it and made a whole video in depth about Cubic. Which is funny because it's talking about useful proof of work, but in reality, that's the whole architecture was an extreme mess, a different type of mess, but in a similar manner, complete mess. The underlying architecture is what matters most. And if you don't have it, if you have something extremely centralized, what are you doing? I mean, we're here investing in crypto, are we not? Or are we investing some random startup, some sketchy startup that has a grand idea and they're trying to get this this idea working with some pretty rugged underlying architecture? I don't know. All right, then we got the Senate governance, the routine parameter changes. Does this require governance? Yes, but the Open Tensor Foundation must close it. They have the final say on what happens here. So again, this is just, it's not ideal. I'm gonna be honest, not ideal. And that's why I personally only invest in the most optimized. Okay, I'm there and choosing Kaspa because it's the most optimized, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking at a system that's worthy for the test of time and is possible to have a global adoption. 8 billion people can be onboarded to a layer 1. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a system that can bring about the speeds that Visa can handle. The speeds in decentralization. I'm looking for the most decentralized crypto. I'm looking for the most secure crypto. I'm looking at the most scalable crypto. This is what I'm looking for, because when you have a layer 1, a foundation that is the most optimized, you can build anything on it. Think about it. If you have the most optimized network, you can run any sort of application, any sort of data call, data function on it. Run the internet through it. But guess what? This is better than the internet because this is decentralized. It's not just about money, but it's about data. That's something that you really have to understand. AI is a form of data. Okay, that's an application. It uses AI, and you could put that on the most optimized layer 1. That's how it's done. The Open Tensor, they're having a lot of work, having a lot of experience with this AI model. I think they could take it forward, but they have to look long term. They have to look outside the box that they built themselves in, okay? Because they did it. They did it to themselves. What is a substrate? I'm going to explain how Bittensor literally knew that they were not building something off the bat to be optimized. Because Substrate is a blockchain development framework, essentially a modular toolkit for building your own custom blockchain. Polkadot is one crypto that uses Substrate, and they have the company that built it, well, they built Polkadot, so it makes sense here. So essentially, think about it like building a blockchain from scratch. That's the one way. Writing your own operating system from scratch, extremely hard, takes years. That's how you can do it right. Using Substrate, think about it like this. A little simple analogy is WordPress. Maybe you've heard of WordPress before. It's a website builder platform. Okay, so a website that's built on WordPress is Subtensor TAO. It's the TAO is the chain, and that's what it is. It's basically a website built on WordPress. Okay, you get some pretty cool websites built on WordPress, but you can't get something that's some like industry leading thing. Palette Subtensor, that's the custom WordPress plugin that Open Tensor Foundation wrote. And then you have the sudo key. Okay, that's the WordPress admin password. Basically, they can do whatever the heck they want to the TAO chain, and that's without any sort of governance. Okay, then there's runtime upgrades. That's pushing a plugin update in real time. They could do that, again, anytime they want with that master key, the sudo key. WordPress built-in user authentication system, OTF, they didn't write it, they just configured it, and that's referring to the consensus mechanisms. Grandpa refers to the consensus mechanism on the L1. That's what the nodes, the OTF nodes, the few of them that they have, they work off this Grandpa. It's basically for transaction finality. I'll be going to this in a little bit more detail later in the video, but at the end of the day, in this consensus, this finality mechanism doesn't matter at all. At the end of the day, it's all relying on these nodes. You got to trust the nodes, these few nodes. If it was like 1,000 nodes, then sure, you could trust You could trust 1,000 individual different nodes, but when you have a few nodes from one single entity, one single foundation, it's not about trusting the consensus. It's just about trusting the foundation here. This math works fine, but the nodes, they can push whatever the heck they want. So TAO's blockchain is not a ground up innovation. It's a configured substrate instance with a custom AI incentive palette. That's not a criticism, it's pragmatic engineering. They took the pragmatic engineering route of they wanted to focus on AI from the start, from the get-go. That's what they wanted to do, and that's what they did. But they didn't build a model that had the security properties that can combat attack surfaces. No, they just introduced much more attack surfaces by choosing the substrate model, and the governance mechanisms are largely inherited from Substrate's design choices, which are majorly flawed. So it's not really anything to blame from OTF of what they invented or carefully audit themselves. No, it's all just as a result of using the substrate model and everything that gets incorporated from it. That was their choice. They took kind of like an easy route, and this is now the price they have to pay. So one day, are they going to change to a proof of stake model, to change the whole layer 1 to proof of stake? Is that going to actually improve Bittensor? Could that improve it? It's certainly going to be better than proof of authority. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a useful proof of work model that is the most optimized way to use AI in the real world to bring it into crypto and to be able to bring a mass adoption. And that's the only way to go forward. It's not about bringing AI into crypto and finding adoption there. It's about being able to integrate what's currently out there. The AI that's currently out there, massive amounts of money, massive amounts of infrastructure that's there, being able to give crypto as a solution for those existing things. That's the way forward to mass adoption. And that's what I'm going to be explaining at the end of the video, using Jonathan Sompolinski's his own thoughts about it. So that is why Bittensor used it. They didn't want to spend years building a blockchain infrastructure, okay? They wanted to build an AI incentive layer from the start that handles their logic, their subnet registration, weight settings, the consensus mission staking. So the key implications, everything we discussed, I already mentioned pseudo key, grant of finality, proof of authority setup, runtime upgrades, governance system. All of this is inherited from the substrate that they chose. And the compounding problem, again, this is just another little cherry on top of everything, is that the Open Tensor Foundation sees everything. So they have the control, and it doesn't just stop at control of literally the whole blockchain, but now they actually could see and work like an MEV bot, because OTF, Open Tensor Foundation, they see every single swap before it executes. Because on Bittensor TAO, all pending transactions enter a public mempool, and that is what OTF, the Open Tensor Foundation proof of authority nodes control, meaning that Open Tensor Foundation themselves have the most privileged position possible for MEV extraction, basically being able to sandwich attack. You make a transaction, just for example, you want to buy some TAO on a decentralized exchange or whatever it is, any sort of transaction, they front run you. They get their transaction in there first, then you finally buy, and that creates like a slippage that sends the price up. And then what they do, they could just sell from what the price just increased, they could sell. So there's no cryptographic constraint stopping Open Tensor Foundation from front running every single trade on every single subnet automated market maker. There's nothing to stop them. There's no cryptographic constraint. It's all a complete trust me, bro. It's all of it. So honestly, the way it's structured, it wouldn't surprise me to learn down the line that that's what Open Tensor Foundation has been doing. They've just been like having these slight bad intentions just to be able to make a quick little buck on the side while running Bittensor TAO. It wouldn't surprise me, because all of it's possible. When someone has the ability to take advantage of a system, they usually do. Okay, it's not about like ethics, especially in crypto, usually go straight out the window. Because if you can do it, usually you do it. If it means having more money. Because this is a very competitive, this is a PvP environment. There's hardly much regulatory and legal scrutiny over anything. It's a wildy west. So that's why a lot of people can take advantage of others if the underlying system allows it. Whether they do this is purely a question of ethics, not a technical impossibility. And that's the sad part about it. You got to rely on ethics and trust. It's crazy, man. And that's why we already saw a $30 million hack from an insider already happen. So what's all the attack surfaces on Bittensor? You got sandwich attacks on the subnet automated market makers, and every single subnet has an automated market maker because every single subnet has its own little mechanism for its liquidity, basically like for a token on the subnet. So you got half of liquidity on TAO and half in a separate little token within a subnet. Basically, it's creating these what represents basically like a DEX pool, automated market maker. And these pools have very thin liquidity, so the severity of such sandwich attacks is very high, partially mitigated by an opt-in MEV shield. This is the band-aid that Bittensor Foundation they added in. It's optional. Downside is increases the length, confirmation time, increases the delay for a transaction. The fact that they're not even putting it up mandatory for every single transaction is pretty sad. That you got to opt in for it, and not all transactions can have the shield on as well. Then you also have OTF able to theoretically front run every single transaction, every single one. Severity is existential. They control ordering of the entire blockchain. I mean, that's just wild. So the status, there's no cryptographic mitigation, none. So they can do whatever they want, and it's just complete trust me, bro. Public mempool exposure, severity, high. So again, there's an opt-in, there's a band-aid that they threw on. An optional encrypted mempool is available, but whether it be used or not, that's the type of things that you have to enforce. You don't make it optional, you make it required. Like honestly, if they have the best intentions for Bittensor TAO for the community members, like why would they not require this MEV shield and this encrypted mempool? The MEV shield is basically encrypting a block, so it's not possible to see the contents of the block until it's finally published. So like, why would you not do that? It honestly, it just makes me question the intent of the Bittensor Foundation. Even if it makes transactions a little bit more, it increases the confirmation time to have this extra shield. Gosh, the confirmation time, the transaction speed it already stinks. So just having it a little bit worse, is that really that bad when you could at least be safe, at least a lot safer from a lot of these attack surfaces regarding MEV attacks? It doesn't just stop there. It doesn't stop there, man. It just keeps going. How much bad exposure from the centralization, all the security risks that stem from it. There's a supply chain attack that happened. A critical $8 million was stolen. Okay, what happened is that, again, from this centralization, the Bittensor Foundation, someone was able to embed a certain code, a malicious code, directly into the supply chain of like the entire architecture, and well, $8 million was stolen. Okay, so that was resolved, but it requires ongoing vigilance. Like, could it happen again? Who knows? You know, they at least stopped it from continuing. Of course, another supply chain attack could happen if another vulnerability gets exposed anywhere in their entire architecture, which most especially it's the foundation. The foundation is what's most susceptible. Bittensor Foundation. If anything gets the single point of failure from there, it could attack the whole supply chain. It could attack every single layer. It could attack the L2 and every single person, every validator, every delegator, every staker, every miner, everyone. There was even a batch called DDoS, or a DOS attack. And that outage for 2 days, severity high, that was patched. Could have happened again, who knows? But there's been so many attacks on Bittensor that, you know, I give them credit that the fact that they're still running and that they still have such a high valuation, a very large community, and people that honestly, they don't care. I feel like they just don't care to do a deeper dive. It's like, okay, hey, price go up, I'm happy. But like at the end of the day, it's like the house of cards might just collapse one day when people start to realize, hey, these problems, they're just constantly causing money to be stolen from all these different attack surfaces, all stemming from the centralization issue that it's built on. So like, when is this going to be actually settled? When's it going to be a high priority to bring in a new consensus model, to bring in a new architecture for the entire chain, for the entire blockchain? When's that going to be a priority? When's this going to be possible? And when that does happen, is the L2 going to be still there? Is it going to be optimized, or is it going to still be highly concentrated and susceptible to various attacks, including still the governance model that is completely not decentralized. So again, I'll be going into depth about what can be an optimized version for this AI to bring in an AI adoption with crypto. I'm going to be going in depth about that at the end of the video, so stick with me. All right, so now we're going to look at just the chain itself, the scalability of it. So there's no security, there's no decentralization. So what is there? There's not even scalability. So at the end of the day, it's just basically just like an AI sandbox, and it's not even optimized. But here we go, looking at block time and TPS, transactions per second. So Bittensor produces a new block approximately every 12 seconds. TPS, not looking good, not looking so hot. So with every block every 12 seconds, it's just crazy. One block every 12 seconds. Kaspa runs in that same 12 seconds would run 120 blocks. Major difference, especially when you look at Kaspa having the utmost security and utmost decentralization. There's not those multiple layers required to run the whole architecture and these different centralized like entities that govern and control literally everything and anything they want. None of that. Finality happens within 1 to 2 blocks, means roughly 12 to 24 seconds for a hard finality. Deterministic. So once it's finalized, transactions cannot be reversed. Unlike probabilistic with like with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has finality of 1 hour, requires 60 minutes to get that probabilistic finality comparable to something that's deterministic. Basically, it reaches the probability after 60 minutes, after a whole hour, that it's so unlikely. It's like the universe would have to collapse. Essentially, something like that. Okay, that's just an example of how probability can still be offering finality. That's with Bitcoin, 60 minutes. With Kaspa, 1 second provides a very high confidence of finality. It's not absolute, but you get that absolute, the probabilistic finality similar to Bitcoin at 60 minutes. You get that in about 10 seconds, if not less than 10 seconds. It could be down to 6 seconds, 6 to 10 seconds for Kaspa. Hey, let's just say 10 seconds. It doesn't even matter. Every single second you add, it adds an obscene amount of probability chance like that the transaction cannot be reverted. So at 10 seconds, it's the chance that the whole solar system would collapse. Oh, but at 11 seconds, it's the entire universe. The chance the entire universe collapses. Like every single second that gets added to Kaspa, waiting for the confirmation, for the finality, it just adds so much extra security, even comparing to Bitcoin. So this is everything looking at a hashing power, a control of the whole network, less than 50%. Proof of stake, you have 33%. At 33% for a proof of stake, you have the whole proof of stake network done for. It's going to be frozen. You won't be able to use it. It won't be usable at 33%. At 33% for Bitcoin or Kaspa, for example, it's not even likely for them to be able to make a malicious attack. Even at 51%, even at 55% control of the hashing power on Bitcoin and Kaspa, it's not even guaranteed that an attack can happen because it's all probability. Imagine having 55% of the hashing power and not being guaranteed to have a successful attack on the whole blockchain. Imagine spending tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars just for your attack to fail. Even though you reached over 50% control of the entire network, maybe wasn't good enough. Unlucky. All right, you get 60%, maybe you'll have some better odds. 70%, there you go. That's a lot more in your favor. You can't get a more secure network, not just in crypto, but in an entire world of networks, than a Nakamoto consensus-based proof of work like Kaspa and Bitcoin. Kaspa is going to be upgrading its security with Dagnite protocol. That's something that's going to be wild. That's a whole other topic for another time, but you have to understand that what Kaspa currently has, it is the most optimized proof of work. Imagine where it's going to go down the line with Dagnite protocol in a year or less than a year. That's going to be taking Kaspa to a level that can be on par, not just on par, but be able to match and exceed what Visa, MasterCard, these traditional banks, their centralized entities, what they even can offer. Kaspa is going to be on par and to be able to exceed that type of scalability while offering security like none other. That's the most optimized crypto, all right? I like optimization. So when I look at things that are not optimized for example, looking at finality here, looking at consensus model, it just doesn't make sense. get Bittensor TAO on Kaspa, then we're talking, okay? So looking at now transaction per second, just to give you just a gist, a little bit of an idea, what's the transactions per second? What's the TPS of Bittensor? Okay, so, Bitcoin is a 6 TPS. It's pretty slow. Kaspa right now can operate at 3,000 to over 5,000, around that range right now. Down the line, it's going to be able to reach 30,000 to 50,000 transactions per second. It's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. Looking at TAO transactions per second, we have to first look at the blocks, transactions per block. All right, the block time is one every single 12 seconds. So we'll be able to do the math. But here looking at it, you got the simple TAO transfer. That's going to be able to maximize. It's a theoretical peak for TPS is going to be coming from the TAO transfers, while other heavier loads, basically like the things that filled blocks with more data, you're not going to be able to fit as many transactions in those blocks. So at 12 seconds per block and being able to fit 3,000 to 5,000 theoretical maximum transactions in that block, you're seeing a max theoretical throughput of about 300 TPS. 300. All right, that's just basically simple transfers. And if we're looking at at large weight setting calls for transactions, that drops the max theoretical peak transaction per second from 300 TPS to 12.5 TPS to 25 TPS. That's what it drops down to. That's the range for TAO. For theoretical max throughput, 12.5 TPS to 300. You could, even if you want to be very generous and look, fine, 500 TPS. That's the max theoretical throughput. But in reality says something a lot different. In reality, there's just so many empty blocks. The blocks are nowhere near full. Daily transaction counts are not heavily publicized, and high TPS smart contract. It's not a typical high TPS smart contract platform. It can't allow that. It's focusing on the AI aspect of that layer 2 within it. Okay, so the most block space intensive events that actually happen on Bittensor are the tempo boundaries that happen every 360 blocks, which is about every 72 minutes. That is when all validators across every single subnet must submit their set weights extrinsics simultaneously. Extrinsics basically referring to transactions. It's basically creating an environment that can be easily attacked. And that's where the DOS attack happened, where at this exact moment, a DOS attack is basically being able to exploit exactly this pressure point by overwhelming block processing temporarily during this window of time where there is so much events happening based on the set weights from the validators for the AI. Again, this is not a very optimized system. There's very clear attack points that can happen, not just in a single place, but across the entire architecture of Bittensor. It's just wild how many attack surfaces and how large these attack surfaces are. It's not just about a problem from centralization, but it's a problem of the entire architecture. And gosh dang, man, you better be praying that these devs know a thing about what they're doing and that these problems do exist, because there's a lot of work to be done to even get this system remotely close to something that would be fair to call a real robust crypto system. But unfortunately, they're going to be having to rewrite everything in order to go to such a point. It'll essentially be a whole nother crypto. So on that note, guys, peace out. If you don't have yet a cold wallet, I suggest getting Tangem. This is the hat I'm wearing. It's an excellent cold wallet. There's always deals going on. I've got promo codes in my I got links and promo codes in my description. Take a look if you want. It's truly my favorite cold wallet for a lot of reasons. I made a video on it if you were interested in knowing the exact details of why I promote and suggest Tangem over any other cold wallet. I had the video on my channel. Take a look. Look up cold wallet on my channel and you'll find it. All right. Keep hodling. Stay safe out there and peace out.